My title is Gadkari, or my family's title, which means fort keeper, someone who takes care of the fort. And so my many moons ago ancestors were titled a Gadkari. I'm not going to let anything define me apart from who I want to be. Nobody can tell me what I want to do or what I should be doing and what I can't do, more importantly, because there were all of these people, they used to love it, or rubbing, salt on our wounds. And it used to hurt. It used to sting. Two people I would definitely give a shout out to who sort of helped me shape my thinking was one, Manish Porwal. Second person, Devraj. He is a visionary. The reason I started writing was to channelize what I was feeling. I was very often having all sorts of thoughts in my head, from the darkest to the deepest and the worst ones. We had a really big celebrity face, cricketing face, that had promised to do the meet and greet. I think about 18 hours prior, we were told this person is not coming.
Nupur Gadkari, United Nations Women Representative for the UK, TED speaker, and currently Global Marketing Director for a fintech firm, Candex.
That's right.
Welcome to the show, Just Another Lens.
Thank you, Sanjiv, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. For those who are listening, what can you expect? People know I'm all about resilience and I'm all about the underdog. And you are the epitome of the underdog and can do.
Oh my.
You've achieved some amazing successes, but I don't think many people understand the challenges behind the scenes. And I think those experiences that, if we can share, if you don't mind,
Sure,
will give a lot of hope and belief to people going through their own journeys. So let's start at the beginning, Nupur.
sure.
Born and brought up in Chembur in Mumbai.
That's right.
What were those early years like for you? Who were the important people in your life?
Early years were wonderful. I had a lot of love around me. And I think it started with not just my parents, but more so my grandparents. They have played a very, very pivotal role in my life in shaping who I am, my values, my beliefs, and just, I think, my general attitude in life. And, at this stage, I remember something my grandmother used to say, and I was very, very close to her. She used to always say that, if you have to prove something, do it and show it rather than say it and show it. So that's sort of become my motto ever since she used to say that to me. So
Just do it.
just do it.
There's so many different versions of actions speak louder than words.
Yes.
But simple wisdom from your grandmother
Yeah.
has stayed with you. And I've heard your stories and some of your nuggets over a long period of time. And I think she'd be proud of you
I hope
carrying
she
that
is.
on.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your grandparents and your family. In terms of your environment,
Yeah.
it was full of love. But I know that life took a curveball on you
Yes.
during an early part of your life. So you went from the ideal Cinderella world to everything falling apart.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing a bit about that?
Yes. It was in my sort of early teens. It's something that happened that I think at the time I wasn't prepared for at all. So my parents decided to walk their own ways. And I think what I'm trying to share is more from my lens and how it played on me. And the things I think I started to think about, which I don't think I ever did think about at the time. So I'm talking about an age where I was about 15 years old, 15, 16, that sort of age. And this is, finishing a very, very important year in your school year, which is the 10th standard, which sort of defines what you do next and going forward in your life. And I found that this news was extremely hard for me to digest because I think it was less of being told that, look, this is going to happen and certain aspects of your life are likely to change, but it was more the dramatic unfolding of how it happened. Wasn't easy. And it came with its own share of struggles and pain and, dark moments in your life, which you just don't know where they hit you from.
I apologize if this is pushing too hard, but I think, in the modern world,
Yeah,
partners separating is a reality for so many people.
that's right.
And for many, the consideration of what's it like for the children, or what might it be like, and we're all different, and there's no perfect way, I guess,
No.
to deal with that. But as a teenager, I know you had 2 younger siblings,
Yeah.
quite a few years younger than you, right?
Yes, 8 and 10. My sister's 8 years younger to me, and my brother's 10 years younger to me.
So that's quite a lot for a 15,
is.
16-year-old. So let's get into your eyes and your head at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us what was going through your mind? Because like you said, it was a shock to you.
Yeah.
So what was going through your head and how did you handle that?
Lots of things, Sanjiv. I think the first thing for me that hit me was my mum and I were very close, and she was almost like my best friend. So she was someone I would, I think, look forward to coming home to and sharing a lot of things from my day at school or what happened. And I think somewhere that line that, your mother becomes your friend as you grow up started to happen in my life. And that was the moment when I think when this happened, it was a very harsh parting for me. While it wasn't parting technically, but it was not having her around me 24/7. So one of the first things I felt was just that pain of what is a world like without having her around, which was very, very different and painful. The second thing I think that I realized was my dad has been this amazing pillar of lots and lots of things for me as I was growing up. And he has been and still is my hero. But then also sometimes I think to see him in some sort of struggle and pain became very, very difficult for me to digest, So imagine, someone wearing one of the Superman capes or a Batman cape, but in agony. And just that picture in my head used to be very painful. So I think what it developed in me was a lot of anger that, why is this happening? Can someone please sit down and explain? Because I had no answers at the time.
And presumably nobody's giving you answers.
Nobody was, because I think at the time everybody was trying to find solutions to overcome the situation in the best way possible. And there I was, this 16-year-old, now very angry kid, looking for answers. No one had them. Looking for a way to fix things. There was no way. And, the pain of, like I said, just being away from mom, trying to be whatever I can in terms of support to my dad and also my grandparents, because they were not young.
Trying to be support and trying to fix things? What do you mean?
I mean, as a 16-year-old, I didn't know what I could do to help the situation. So I think one of the focus points for me in my life became my siblings. And at the time, and this has taken a lot of practice to say siblings, but because of the age difference, and I would always hear my mom and dad speak of them as the kids, right? I started calling them the kids. So where are the kids? Are the kids at school? Have the kids eaten? So it just became something I started saying, but I think in effect it started to condition my mind to actually thinking of them as some sort of children that I don't have, but sort of have.
Your
because
kids.
I'm my kids to take care of, because I love them. I love them to bits. And they were very, very young. So if I'm 16, I'm talking about my brother who's about 6 and my sister who's 8.
So in practice, how did that translate in your daily routine?
Oh, in very different ways. So because dad used to fly, and I did have, like I said, my grandparents, but just because they were old, it doesn't mean they didn't do anything. They did enough and more.
But you were protecting them.
I was trying my best. I mean, as a 16-year-old. So I made a choice to take on certain chores of the household that my mother would. So just a quick check on groceries. And at the time, I have to be honest, I cook today and I am very passionate about it. But at the time, I couldn't differentiate between moong dal and tur dal and chana dal. And I used to go to a store sometimes and ask the lady saying, excuse me, auntie, can you tell me which one's which? Because I didn't know. Or, in India, we have a lot of things easy, I have to say. Like we get milk at our doorstep, we get newspapers, we get ironed clothes every day. But then just keeping count of which clothes had gone and how many clothes we have to get washed and ironed and laundered. So little bits. And I felt like that was help to, let's say, dad, who was flying and obviously away because of his work. But somewhere, I don't know, I think I was this little kid trying to make both of them see that it's okay while you sort your stuff out, someone's handling the bits at home. Someone's taking care of the kids. Someone's taking care of their homework. Someone's making sure they're eating right.
But how did that impact you? Because you're on this pivotal year in your own studies. So what did that mean in practice?
Many, many ways, Sanjiv. Sometimes I had to bunk my college lectures in the morning because if dad was away and, these guys would go to school in the morning, I'd just be there to see them off because I loved someone standing at the window just waving me a nice goodbye for the day, watching me safely get into the school bus until I reached school. So I just felt like they should have that taste of what it is to be a child and what it is to have someone just making sure you're okay and not just like, oh yeah, they've gone and no one's at the window. So those little things that I remember from my childhood. So that used to make me bunk my first lecture in college because there was no way I could go all the way to town. And we're talking Chambord to Churchgate, which is a 45-minute train journey. There was no way I could get there in time for a 7 a.m. lecture.
Wow. So you basically wanted them to have continuity. And the experience that you had of somebody seeing you off every day.
Yeah.
What about the other end of the day?
The other end of the day, I would be rushing back from college, probably missing my last lecture again, but rushing back to make sure someone's home. Again, something I remember growing up as a child, when I came home from school, my grandmom, because mom and dad both were working, my grandmom used to have a little glass of milk and some biscuits every day. And I would look forward to that because I would sit and I would tell her, this happened in school and this happened and my teacher said this and I got into trouble for this. So it's such an important part of just that happiness of the moment of sharing a day with somebody. And I think there was one moment where I think I was coming home from my college. My train was delayed. And I remember just coming and I saw my brother and my sister waiting we had a lift at the time. And my brother was just, swinging his feet as they do, just waiting because there was no one at home. That picture till today, I'm sorry if I cry, it breaks my heart. Because I'm like, they shouldn't have that. I had so much. They should have someone to talk about their day. So I said, okay, you know what? If the last lecture has to go for a toss, it has to go for a toss. So it meant coming home, making sure I don't miss that train from, I'm sorry, I'm making you cry too. Sorry. And this is supposed to be your podcast. So it meant, if it meant missing that lecture, it meant missing that lecture. If it meant, letting go of an important thing or an activity in my college years, it just didn't matter. Because they had become such an important part of my life that I just wanted them to have that childhood that I did,
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
So not only did you miss the first lecture at college to make sure you, as you say, your kids, though they're your siblings, you were there to wave them goodbye and set them off.
Yeah.
But you decided in that moment, coming home seeing them waiting with nobody there to receive them, that you'd miss your last lecture just to make sure they came home to somebody.
Yes. It just became my motto. Like, I just had to catch that train home. And, it would give me so much joy because I couldn't cook at the time, for crying out loud. But I think just making that bread and butter, chutney and bread sandwich at the time with a glass of milk, and then they would start rattling off what happened just the way I used to. And that used to be like, win for the day. I don't need anything more, because I was hoping, and I still hope, but I hope it was shaping memories of their childhood, because for them, a large part of their life has been not having mom around. I at least got a lot of time with her until I was 15.
Incredible. What was that like in terms of your studies? What did your teachers think? What was that like? Because presumably they don't just let you go and miss lessons.
No,
and teach you
I
afterwards.
got blacklisted. So what happens in India, for everyone listening, is if you miss a certain amount of lectures, you get blacklisted, which means you're in trouble. And you better have a good explanation. And one morning when I went to college, they said, you've got to meet Professor Victor Madikam. And I said, sure. And I first explained it to the head of the department. I said, look, I'm not missing them because I want to miss them. I'm missing them because there's some problems in my house. I'm talking about it for the first time. So I'm not making any excuses. And they didn't believe me, because they obviously thought I was trying to get away or out of this situation.
How long have you been doing this before you had that conversation, hiding it from them?
Oh, an entire semester.
Wow.
Because it got that bad. It got, like, it was visible that I wasn't there. I just wasn't
But you
impressed.
couldn't speak to anybody because you didn't want to tell anybody because?
I was, I think I was ashamed of, or I was not ashamed. I think I was worried about what people might think, because I felt like what happens, we're talking about a time, Sanjiv, when people talk about divorces now. And it's a very normal, okay thing, because people look at, wellness, mental wellness and physical well-being and all of those things. But at the time, divorce was still very much a taboo topic.
A stigma.
A huge stigma. And often I would get asked this question, not just from people who were friends of my family, but some extended family too. I'd get asked questions like, now what will happen to you? Who will marry you? What will happen to these kids? Oh my God. And it just used to create this, I don't want to know this. I don't want to hear this. So I think, in the hope that someday things would get better, I never wanted to color someone's perception about what was going on in my family.
Just to be clear, this is the first time you've ever publicly talked about it.
I have, yeah. I spoke about it very, very slightly on my TED Talk, but I don't think I had this level of depth of what my day would look like. But yes, so in the hope of protecting my family, I didn't ever talk to anyone, not even my best friend at the time.
Wow. That must have been incredibly tough.
It was.
But again, it comes from, for me as an observer, it comes from an amazing place of love and compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
I'm all about trying to help share stories and insights that help people tune into the happiness and let go of things that I need to let go of.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that they need to let go.
Yeah.
But I remember you, one last bit before we move on.
Yeah, go on, please.
Parents' evening.
Yes.
For the kids.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, not only did you take on this role of parenting in terms of being there, but you wanted to ensure that you were there every parents' evening for them as well.
Yeah. So again, in India, you have these sports days and you have parents' days and you have children's day. And it's meant to be a day where your family comes and cheers you on. And
I think it's the same the world over. It's supposed to be that if
yeah.
you can.
And It's a day you want to, be that person on stage, but find that one face in the crowd who's clapping the loudest. And for me, it was always my mom and dad. But I just couldn't imagine a moment where my siblings didn't have it. Like, how is that even possible? And I know that, people go through a lot worse. Sometimes people lose their parents very early on. They lose, in fact, a lot of their family very early on, and they have to be, just figuring out ways of how they make it in this world. But I think at the time, all of these moments were becoming such a big mountain for me that I just decided that in whatever way, as a sister, a daughter, a granddaughter, if I can make this moment slightly less painful, it would be worth it. So going for a parents' day or going for their open day sometimes, if my dad was away and mom wasn't around, obviously, used to be a thing because I was all of 16.
But at the expense of what, though? How on earth?
Expense of my classes, my lectures. Because what else could I do?
Because you chose.
I
that
chose.
was more important.
I chose. I would, if I had to ever replay it, I wouldn't change a thing because I have no regrets.
That is incredible. And I think your family are lucky. Whatever your parents and your grandparents have instilled in you, I know they're probably proud of you now. And
well, I hope so.
moving on from there, I talked about the challenges. That's just a glimpse into the challenges, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But through that, you still managed to keep moving and didn't let that set you back on your academics. So how did you manage to do that?
The one thing I think as a child at the time I knew was that if I had to shut all these questions out, what will happen to you, what will happen to the kids, etc., etc., if I had to shut them out, I had to be somebody despite the adversity. And I remember talking to my grandmom at the time, and she said something to me in Marathi, which I'll say and I'll translate. And she said, there's a saying, Khain tar tupashi, nahi tar upashi. It means khain meaning when I eat, I will eat with ghee in my food, or I'd rather stay starved. What that means is, there's no pride in that. What that means is work that hard that you can afford ghee, because ghee is not cheap in India. And that just became, and she could see my pain. My grandparents they have been my anchor. It's not that my mom or dad, they couldn't, but because I think they were going through their own things, I never sat down and opened my heart out to my mom or my dad at the time because I was too angry and I was too, let them sort out what's going on because they were hurting too in their own ways. So I felt like I can't be this person adding more. But I would run to my grandparents and they used to be, I don't know what wisdom, patience, and determination they would have, but they just let me be me. So I think if I had to say who are the two people who know me in this world like nobody else does, it has to be them. And they could see it. They could see that I was struggling in my own way, but putting on this front of, no, we can do it. I'm going to do this. And I think somewhere my programming became, you know how they say, don't cry over spilt milk? It just became, milk is spilt. What's next? Because I just didn't stop to cry. I didn't stop to feel. I was just constantly filling in leaks in the bucket. Every time one was fixed, another one would open. Every time that was fixed, another one would open. So I was just running on this treadmill constantly.
You know what? I'm certain people will be able to join the dots up when we go into your career and the way you handle that. Just based on that line, yeah?
Yeah.
Don't cry over spilt milk. Reset
There's
and go
no
from
time.
here. There's no time.
No time.
But something else came to my mind while you were talking. You have quite a heritage, right? Like, in terms of your ancestors.
Yes.
On both sides of your
Yes.
parents' family. So
Yeah.
you're very loud and proud about that. So you want to give us a little bit of a story about who that is and where your lineage is?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start with my dad's side. So my last name is Gadkari, and a Gad in Marathi means fort.
Okay.
And you would have heard of the great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He was a great warrior, the greatest king the world could have ever seen. He was intelligent, and he never believed in showing power just physically. It was a lot of strategy and how you play the mind of your enemy to win. My title is Gadkari, or my family's title, which means fort keeper, someone who takes care of the fort. And so my many, many, many moons ago ancestors were titled a Gadkari. So that, I think that fire in the belly,
It certainly shows through.
it's genetic.
It really is.
It's genetic. It's genetic.
And it's inspirational and it's awesome.
I wish I could show you our heritage family swords and from the time from
The claws,
from
yeah.
the
Knuckle duster claws, I remember seeing pictures of it. And then on your mum's side, again, you have some.
So mum's side, her side was related to the Queen of Jhansi or Jhansi Ki Rani.
This is the queen that if I'm correct, is the one who strapped her child to her back
And went to war
to defend
and fight for
her kingdom,
justice. And
fight for
defend-
justice.
Yes.
That's incredible. And that warrior, I can see it. I'm thinking, world, be careful, beware. Nupur is willing to take on anything for justice. And that, for what's right, for justice, what you believe in. And
Always.
that's amazing. So let's move on now. You ended up in college. You managed to get into college and pursue a business degree at the time.
Yes.
But as I understand it, you were still being that bridge at home.
Yeah.
So tell us how the heck you managed to follow your passion and your interests at college and then balance things at home. So what was that like?
So whenever, I think to start off with, whenever my dad was in town, let's start with that. He would always encourage me to go do more things that I usually chose not to do.
Okay.
Because I think at some point he could see that I was saying no to a lot of things a growing child should say yes to, like hanging out with friends or going for a birthday or whatever. So at those times, I used to try and maximize my exposure in the extracurricular activities in college. And they could be, intercollegiate, debate competitions, business projects, launching brands, all sorts of activities to just get more of a flavor of what's out there and how can I learn. But the times when I guess he would be away, I just didn't have the heart, even though my grandparents were always like, I'll do it, you don't. I just didn't have the heart to say, yes, okay, you do it. So sometimes a day would look like making sure I take that train back, like I said, making sure I make a quick sandwich, keep a glass of milk for them, and then they get ready because one of them is off to cricket coaching, the other one's off to badminton.
When you say off to,
They
go by
hadn't.
themselves or you?
No, I would take them. So I couldn't drive at the time, but we would grab a rickshaw, and I would take my little bag of textbooks, project work, and I didn't have a laptop at the time because we had a desktop. So what I would do is make notes and then come back home and then type them out on whatever PowerPoint or whatever project I was working on. But I would take them to the local gymkhana. My brother would go for his cricket coaching. My sister would go and do her badminton. And it used to be a 90-minute slot. And I would get those 90 minutes and I'd catch a, close by, little cafe within the gymkhana, spread all my project work out and then work out of there, end in time so I could pick them up from their class and bring them back home in time for dinner. So sometimes life looked like that.
I'm not quite sure how the heck to even respond to that.
Yeah.
That really is the life of a parent for many of us nowadays.
Yeah.
But working, studying,
Yeah.
well, looking after kids, but you were still a teenager yourself.
Yeah.
Uh, you go through this age where everybody, your hormones kick in. You seem your nature, human nature, is to challenge the world and challenge the people around you. But you kind of went, okay, I'm gonna close this off. I have to look at it in this mature way. And academically, you still had some sort of fire in your belly to achieve.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think it came from more from a place of I want to prove it to the world that what's happening in my family and what people are pointing fingers at me for is not going to define me. And I remember saying this in my TED talk as well, but it's something I used to do religiously, what we call today as manifesting. At the time, there was no such term. But I used to do this religiously with my brother and my sister before we went to bed. Because if I was being asked these questions, I can only imagine what they were being asked in school. Like I remember once.
What's the manifesting? What did you used to say?
So the manifesting was, I'm not going to let anything define me apart from who I want to be. Nobody can tell me what I want to do or what I should be doing and what I can't do, more importantly, because there were all of these people, they used to love it. They loved telling us or rubbing, salt on our wounds. And it used to hurt. It used to sting.
And your way of dealing with that is every evening with your kids, your siblings, you'd sit there and make them say these words.
Yeah.
Before we move on, we've got to share, what are they both doing at the moment?
Oh my God.
What did that manifestation lead to?
Well, look, it's a lot of, firstly, Bapa's grace and all their hard work and determination for sure, which has made my sister an oral and maxillofacial surgeon today. And my brother is a qualified chartered accountant, a qualified CFA, and he is now working as one of the in one of the big four as a consultant.
Like a lot of people, I guess, you think, okay, where's the safe space to be now?
Yeah.
And consulting seems to be one of those safe spaces to be. And you got recruited on campus.
I did.
By EY?
EY.
EY. But you learned quite a lot. I know
amounts.
that you weren't there that long. More of that in a minute. But you learned a hell of a lot. You landed on your feet the first assignment, though.
Yeah, I did. It was very exciting.
So tell us about that first assignment as an analyst.
So EY, firstly, was one of the jobs I wanted to surprise my dad with. I wanted him to know that I landed a job at one of the big four without him knowing I was doing the interview rounds and going through the assessment center, etc. So I landed the job. I remember going and showing him. I kept my offer letter in front of Sai Baba at home. And it was there. And then I took it to him and I touched his feet. And he was extremely happy and proud. But that was the start of EY. But EY was it almost like gave me this amazing project to start with, which was, one of these big car publications. They were doing Car of the Year. And EY were the jury assessors, which meant we had to make sure each car was assessed properly. There was no one around the person assessing. They were doing it individually with their own, observations, etc., experiences. And then we had to tally up the scores to then declare the winner at the end, because they couldn't do that. Like no other juror could see each other's scores, basically. And so my assignment, I remember waking up 5 a.m., we're going to this place, driving down.
So let me just get this right. Your first assignment at EY was as an auditor. Now, auditor to me sounds boring. But your first assignment, analyst, auditor, call it what you want, was to audit the performance metrics and the assessment
for an award show.
And so I guess everybody else who was in your batch was looking at you thinking you're jamming so-and-so. So
a lot of the other analysts at the time were very jealous.
Yeah, I can believe it. So what did that look like in practice? So you're on the way to...
So 5 a.m. we're on the way to Ambi Valley, a really nice place, like about an hour and a half from Mumbai. And
Ambi Valley, is it a racetrack? What is it?
no, it's meant to be this sort of weekend getaway holiday place where you can book like a chalet or a villa and stay with your family, have a nice time. There's a river and there's boating and there's little activities and you come back.
Nice.
But it has, if you actually converted it into a racetrack, because it has like internal roads and stuff, it can be.
Okay.
And so they chose that place. I think they'd booked it out. I'm not sure at the time, but I was excited. So I was there. And suddenly I'm standing in front of like these rally champions of India. And I'm going, oh my gosh, these are like celebs. And each one is given a car to test. And as an auditor, I had another colleague of mine, and we had to sit beside them in each car, different cars, and just make sure, what are they assessing? What are they doing? Just observation. I'm like, sure. And I get in and, one of these rally champions, he goes, fasten your seatbelt. And I'm going, sure. And I don't even know what that means, but I'm like, sure. And he takes off. Like, there is no zero. There's just 180 and above. And he's doing these crazy turns. And I have my little pen and pad and paper. And I'm like, penning my observations, like, did this and did that. And I'm like, how am I supposed to ride at this speed? And I was enjoying the thrill of the ride. And then suddenly in the middle of nowhere, it's an open land. And I think he's testing the brakes. But we are at this crazy speed and he pulls the handbrake and the car goes into a donut. And I'm like, if this is my job for the rest of the year, I love my job. Like, I can do this every day. Auditor for award shows, done. So that was my first assignment.
So you landed on your feet. And presumably, in that world, you had lots of different types of assignments. But I think the analysis part of the role, capturing data, making sense of it, and preparing reports for the consultants to go and present to the clients, I think that was invaluable. And it's some element of you. I know people I know in the word out there, marketing, people don't get it. That means advertising, does it? Does it mean social media? What does it mean? It means a whole bunch of things.
It is, yeah.
And data has been incredibly powerfully used in all of your roles. But I guess that was the grounding for it, right?
100%. And I think EY helped me learn a lot of, shall I say, develop a lot of skills. And one of them is attention to detail. I have to look at something 1,000 times. And I might overlook something, but then I have to give it 2 days and then look at it again, because it is all about the fine print sometimes. It is about making sure when you're thinking about a campaign, a customer event, a consumer promotion, you have to think about it from everything, including the worst case scenario where you should have a contingency plan ready. And it's not that EY taught me these specific things in events, etc., but it taught me how to be more, I guess, have a wider view of a project and make sure that as much as possible, you don't lose sight of everything. Even sometimes staying ahead of the game 2 or 3 steps to know if this happens, then you have this. If this happens, or if this doesn't happen, then you have this. Because sometimes when you're pilot testing a lot of your consumer campaigns, you're trying to take qualitative feedback or sometimes quantitative feedback in market research. All of that plays such a big role in just being prepared for whatever's coming.
So that was a grounding in EY, amazing grounding.
Definitely huge.
For most people, most normal people like me, land myself a job at one of the top consulting firms from grad school, and I just develop a career. But this crazy person in front of me decides to hand a notice in after a year. What the heck was that about?
Again, stemming from personal life, to know that I need to keep going. I need to keep proving myself. I need to keep getting better at something I already love. I decided to then pursue my master's. And that did mean not having a very, very long time in this job. But it did mean trying to challenge myself on an international platform to learn from your competition from France and Greece and US and Russia and elsewhere, and see where you stand. And I think that became very important for me because somewhere I think I was proving to myself that despite the adversity, you can do this.
So Nupur, you're timed at Warwick
Yeah.
doing this marketing strategy. You took on this brand challenge. Tell us about that brand challenge and the way you approached it compared to everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, so we had this FMCG leader come on campus
A
and
globally
say, globally massive
FMCG
FMCG leader,
which we can't name.
which we can't name. And we said, look, they said, if you win this, it sort of serves as an assessment center to test a lot of skills that you have, analytics and, you know, how you sort of read data, etc. But we also will give you an opportunity to interview with us as one of the final stages. So you don't have to go through the first 2 or 3 rounds and you have a job. And so I think the challenge that we were given was a fast food brand that they had, which was in quick noodles. And the perception and the data we were given was that this is becoming a very, junk food kind of brand. It's getting perceived and positioned as that. How can you try and change the health of the brand to impact its sales going forward? Because, revenues were getting impacted and no one was buying it. And I think where we won this was everybody else who was working on this was looking at it more from the consumer's perspective, meaning the child eating these noodles.
Okay.
And so a lot of the solutions that were coming out were driven by a narrative that would excite a consumer, being the child.
Mm-hmm.
I think where we won, and I had my bestie with me on the team, so we are on fire when we're together and brainstorming, by the way, but we said, well, the consumer is the child, the customer or the decision maker is the mum. And we need to come up with a narrative and a campaign to make sure she is happy with that decision. She is happy with why she should be feeding her child what she's feeding. And I think that differentiator really, really made a difference because everything we were saying was targeted to this decision maker being a fully grown adult who couldn't care if there was a free football that came with the noodles, but was more interested in the health and nutrition that this gave the child. And we won.
And that led to you being offered a job.
I did.
Perfect. Happily ever after, right?
Mm.
Despite all these challenges in, your midlife, educational midlife, the journey and the sunshine is there, end of the tunnel. You've taken on this degree, which I may add, you took out a loan for.
I did.
On your own name, right?
For £20,000.
Quit your job, take a loan for £20,000 to pay for the fees of this master's. But now you've got a job.
Yeah.
Back in 2008. How much was the salary then that you were offered?
48,000 annually.
I can see you biting your lips. And there's a reason. So you offered this job.
Mm.
And then fate takes a turn.
Mm.
The global financial crisis hit.
Yep.
And they pulled the job offer. That wasn't all that happened, was it, Nupur?
No.
So what else was going on in the background?
Yeah, so they pulled the offer for lots of reasons, and I couldn't believe. I think my benchmark now to have a job is until you're sitting at your desk and you have an email address and you get emails actively, you don't have a job because you can have a job offer and it can be pulled away from you. So yes, it was heartbreaking because I felt, I don't know, I was 23 and I was in this dream world thinking, I made it. I'm here. I am actually standing in the UK as I had decided to, and I want to make it big. And then this happens out of nowhere, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this now?
The reason I was asking you that is because your choices were not just about you at the time.
No.
So during that year, doing your master's, this exciting time, you're doing this case study, you'd had a job offer, and then in the background, something else was going on.
Yeah.
Take me to that day.
So while I was at Warwick, I think the hope that even though I'm away, miles and miles away, things are still okay or will get okay was still that hope was still alive. And so
You
I,
mean with your parents?
with my parents, with just whatever was happening at home.
There'd been this whole thing had been going on for a few years, 4 or 5 years or something like that. Yeah, you still hung on to hope that you were the bridge in the meantime, and it will work itself out. 23-year-old.
Yeah. There were a lot of things I was taking a decision on personally. One, I was trying to, even with all of my anger, with all of my disappointment, I think I was trying to maintain a very cordial relationship with my mother. And what I was trying
Because
to
she
do,
used to be your best friend.
she used to be, and I still wanted her to know a lot about what was going on in my life. There used to be bouts of anger that came out every now and then, but I think, if you see some of my email trails, they still talk a lot about, oh, guess what, mom, I cooked this today. And because I was learning so much while being on my own. I was learning how to cook, how to manage myself without having family and support around. I was doing groceries. I was doing laundry, like doing it alone. And for me, that was a huge, big step in my own life and learning. But so I was trying to do that with my mom, with my dad, and I would try and call every now and then. Used to get these 5 pound call cards at the time with 700 India calling minutes, and
I remember those.
like a 0800 number. So I would do everything to try and just stay connected with people because I felt like I've moved away for my career, for my benefit, and I don't want anyone, especially the kids, to feel like Didu's not here. She's gone. She's left
Didu's your
us.
pet name.
They call me Didu, which means Didi means elder sister, and out of love they call me Didu. So yeah, I never wanted them to feel that. But there was this one day I remember when my mum called me, and I was in the Warwick Library with my best friend. We were trying to look for what topics of dissertation should we be sort of doing. And I think that was the day she decided that this is it. This is not happening anymore. She also decided to resettle. And all of those things were coming at me like a big
Resettle
surprise.
means?
Getting remarried.
Okay.
Now I can think about it, and now I can deal with it so differently to what I did back then, because I was a 20-something heartbroken not teenager, but 20-something heartbroken person trying desperately to get the situation under control, trying desperately to find a fix in whatever way or shape I can. And here I was thinking, things are okay. They're getting there, because I think I was kept away from a lot of what was probably really going on. And then out of the blue, I get this news and I'm like, hang on, when, what, how? Because all of this time I've been, doing everything and fighting for this not to happen. And that broke my heart like nothing else did, because I don't know if I was ready to hear that. I was ready to understand what that meant. And the first thought, more than even what's dad doing or how he is, I think my first question was, do the kids know? And then my second question was, do my grandparents know? Because both of them were with a very serious heart condition. And I'm like, they cannot know this. And I'm like, my sister or my brother cannot know this, not until they finish their 10th standard, 15 years, which is their make or break year. So I then called my dad and I said, look, I'm coming back. And he was absolutely not for it. And he said, listen, you've made a decision, you've made a choice. You're in England, blah, blah, blah. You have a job offer. And this is the time I didn't know it was pulled off. And I said, I seriously need to reconsider everything, because I don't want my siblings to have a difficult 10 standard. That's going to be a year that either makes them or breaks them. And that's it. You still have a job which takes you around the world. I need to be there. And a few days after that, my offer got pulled anyway. And so it all just seemed to be pointing in a direction, saying, you know what? It's time to pack up, say bye bye to this dream of making it big in the UK, making a life and a career in the UK, and family first. And so I went back.
Family first. You know, there's this early teenager who is grasping on to try and keep the family together.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Parents trying to protect, do what they think's best, shield the kids, shield you. But you talk about this 23-year-old heartbroken. I think you were that teenager who stayed a teenager at heart, and it crystallized when you finally thought the future was set and you could dream for yourself.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, your job offer,
Gets pulled.
£48,000 in 2008, gets pulled.
Yeah. I remember even making up an Excel at the time with my loan repayment schedule,
For a £20,000 loan.
which was done in 2.5 years with savings, keeping some money, and doing
So-
all of that.
And all you could think of in that moment was, what about the kids?
Yeah.
Your siblings, but you still talk about them as your kids.
Yeah.
And what would happen to them, because this was a pivotal year, that 10 standard. But earlier you told us you had to go through your 10 standard and you made choices, took choices to look after them then as well.
Yeah. It's when I think for me in my 10th standard, it's when all of this had started in the house. It wasn't easy.
I get that. So you could relate and understand and
I
wanted
knew
to
how
shield
what
them.
it takes to be in 10th standard. I knew what it takes to study and stay focused, and it's not easy.
So that took you back. You took the choice. Others
did.
stayed and others continued that journey. You could have done that, but you decided you needed to be at home for the kids,
Yeah.
for the grandparents. And you took whatever job at whatever salary, should I say.
Yes.
Now, here's a £48,000 job offer. And you had a £20,000 loan on your name that you had to repay. How much was your first job then when you got back?
£180 a month. So that's 18,000 Indian rupees.
£180 a month. And you had a £20,000 loan to pay off. Presumably, you had your own expenses and everything else to run through that. I don't know how you did it.
I was still trying to do my little bit in whatever I could.
You're somebody who has had such a diverse range of experience and has mastered each. So I just want to put a spotlight on that first role. You talked about that with me in the past, about that being the making of your foundation in marketing. And that was, what, celebrity marketing, you said?
That's right.
So tell us about that world and what you learned.
That was right after Warwick, actually. And as a part of my dissertation, I was doing a lot of interviews with companies who were actively involved in celebrity endorsements. And that was close to what my topic was. So intern in one of the firms, I got interviewed for a job saying, look, you're doing something so relevant to what we do here as a business. Come join us when you're done. And I took that up, the £180 job, that was where it was.
So there's you doing a dissertation on celebrity marketing. Were you particularly interested in it? Is that why you did it? I'm not sure.
I
What the
was
story?
interested in the concept of why brands use celebrities and why do they have an ambassador and what sort of impact it can have on a brand.
Okay. And as part of that, one of the companies you were interviewing as part of your research
Yeah.
back in India said, hey, this is exactly what we do.
Yes,
Why don't you come work for us?
that's right.
But for £180 a month. Okay. Are there any sort of specific insights or experiences during that time from a marketing lens and what you've learned that you would like to share?
Yeah, definitely. I think two people I would definitely give a shout out to who sort of helped me shape my thinking was one, Manish Porwal, who was the first person I worked with and I reported into while I was there. And the second person is Devraj Sanyal. So let me talk a little bit about Manish. Manish is somebody who thought of celebrity endorsements in a way that nobody else did at the time. He was ahead of the time, ahead of his game. And why I'm saying that is because when you're dealing with a celebrity endorsement firm, it's almost like saying, hey, I want this person X. And the company says, sure, this is the day rate card. So if you want 4 days of this person, this into four is the amount you pay. With that comes rights of TV, radio, print, photographs, signing, merchandise, etc. But he thought of it so differently and he created these models, business models, so differently that I found it interesting and exciting to say, wow, you can even do this. You can even make a profitable business out of this. So he influenced that, I think, the innovative thinking out of the box in a very, very big way.
So what do you mean by that?
What I mean is not looking at celebrity endorsements as you as the firm, just as a vendor who's selling a celebrity's time, but being able to marry a celebrity's personality to a brand's personality in a way that it really comes together as a hand in glove association. So it doesn't look forced. And when this person represents your brand and this person becomes the face of your brand, it becomes important to know what kind of power that has. And Manish was also somebody who was not just my boss when he needed to be my boss, but he was also just a human when I needed another human. And I did confide in him about what was happening at home because there were times when I would get a call from the principal's office because my brother's in trouble and he's done something and I had to drop everything and rush back home. So, you can do it once or twice, but then sometimes it becomes very obvious and then you get asked a question saying, it's 2 o'clock, where are you going? And so I had to tell him. And he was wonderful. He was very empathetic and understanding about my situation. So learned a lot from him. Second person, Devraj. He is a visionary. He is currently the MD of Universal Music. And he's, a judge on many of these reality voice, Find the Voice and those kinds of things. But he's amazing. He instilled, I think, in me the idea that don't just do one event. Think of it as an intellectual property that lives on as a legacy. And, one of the projects I worked with at the time was, I got involved in a big music festival called Sunburn. And I remember we were sitting in a conference room and he said, mark my words, one day we'll be selling t-shirts of Sunburn and merchandise of Sunburn. And it's happened. So sometimes I think what marketeers do is you think of an amazing event, but that just becomes that one event. And it keeps consumers and your audience lingering for more, but it never ever comes back, And sometimes that FOMO is good. That FOMO is necessary. But to be able to build on something and cash in on something eventually to start making money, it's so important to have that consistency and regularity in your visibility and messaging. And so he's amazing, and he's been amazing in terms of just teaching us what's right, calling a spade, thinking differently. So yeah.
So a man of conviction, very
100%.
clear.
So these two people I would, I have a lot to say thank you for.
Another part of your journey, but it takes me back to this, kind of linked to this role, celebrity, but also takes me back to something you said much earlier about always having a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, wherever it takes you.
Yeah.
You were in one of your roles in sports marketing. I remember you talking about you're working for Castrol at the time.
That's right.
And Castrol is part of their promo, the distribution promo, is they set up a competition. You set up a competition for the distributors to compete. And the reward being tickets to be at the finals of the World Cup. And it was a T20 World Cup, I believe, that we're specifically talking about. Now, I remember you telling me that you designed this so based on X number of spaces for that World Cup.
Yeah.
And at the last minute, the World Cup was in Bangladesh. At the last minute,
Yeah, we had to take them elsewhere.
yeah, you basically told security reasons you can't take that many people there.
Yeah, I remember.
So that was plan A down the pan.
Yeah.
And you were faced with creating an experience for those who won, who achieved their target, but there wasn't space for them to go to allocation, to go to the objective or the original prize. And you had to create a new experience that was equally impressive and memorable for them. So what were you even thinking like that at that moment?
I think one of the important things you need to remember when you're in marketing is when you make a promise, unless it's one of these acts of God, as they call it in legal terms, like COVID, earthquake, torrential storms, you better have a very good reason if you can't live up to it. We had promised very, very loyal customers and distributors of Castrol that, look, you do this and we'll make sure you get a once in a lifetime memorable experience, and that involves an all expenses paid trip to this country watching this tournament. And we did that consistently for each year that Castrol had the rights for. But this year was spectacularly difficult because we had a security alert. Bangladesh had some local unrest at the time, and we weren't able to send 750 people. And so we had to take that very strategic safety call to say, look, we can manage 30 as a crowd because the tournament isn't going anywhere. It's still there, still happening. But we'll send 30, but we have to...
750 to 30. What about the 720
Yeah,
left?
so the 720, we had to... I think the biggest challenge for me and the team was, what do we do to give them an equally memorable experience that doesn't take away the fact that they work so hard to be here? And so we decided, let's move this to the next closest but most attractive destination, because budgets play a role. I can't just ask for £100,000 again for saying, well, I'm taking them to France, So we decided to go to Dubai. The ICC headquarters is there. They also have an ICC academy, which is a world-renowned academy with lots and lots of amazing hands-on activities in terms of upping your cricketing skills. And that's where actually teams go and practice. So we said, why not convert an area and a place like this into this memorable hands-on experience that the distributors would actually get to live a day in the life of a cricketer? What would they have to go through? And it was amazing. Like, you face balls from, let's say, at the pace of what Brett Lee bowls at, or you would learn to run between the wickets and get timed for how quickly you can do that. And it wasn't a competition for fitness. It was more to give them a taste of, this is what happens, right? And then we actually screened the India game for the entire audience of 700 people. And we converted a massive banquet hall into a stadium.
Wow.
To give them a feel that they were still in the crowd. So yes, you had TV screens and large ones, of course, but just to give them that experience that, no, it's still cricket. No, you can still cheer. So we still gave out the 4 and 6 cards. We still gave out the thunder sticks. We still gave out everything you would in a stadium. The only difference was it wasn't in front of you. It was on a television, a massive television. And we then converted that also into a meet and greet opportunity where we invited a cricketer, and that's another story, but we invited a cricketer to say, you would, meet and greet everybody who came there, give them signed bats, and that would be some sort of memorabilia for them to take home.
So let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Love it. Creativity.
Yeah.
Following through with your promise. I get all of that.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about this. I said 720 people, you're flying them in. And how on earth do you keep track of it? Because you were in charge of this.
Yeah.
So I remember you telling me having this ridiculously complex Excel spreadsheet that you created with buttons and charts and everything all over the place. Tell me about that.
I was still very much learning my skills on Excel at the time, I have to say. But I had this amazing team member, Anuradha. She was this whiz, okay? And she had created what became like this go to book for anything logistical during that time. So I remember the sheet had mapped people from the flight they came in. So you have these if and conditions on Excel. So if you land on this flight and you get into bus number 2 to pick you up from the airport, then you should get a green wristband. You will be in room so and so. You will then get this ticket from this series allocation, and you would be sitting here in the, the event space we created. So the if and condition works. So if I change, let's say one person on flight A went to flight B because he missed it, then you would just go in and change A to B, and then everything would start changing in the adjacent cells.
Incredible level of planning and contingency.
We had no choice, and we didn't have big database and softwares at the time. It was all down to documents and Microsoft, and so.
And presumably you were standing there on the ground, tracking, making sure your people were in the right places to meet and greet.
Look, I have been blessed with this amazing, amazing team of people that I worked with. Mayuresh, Anuradha, Jhelam, Manit. And at the time, all I can remember is this team was in it to win it. We were just like, we're doing this, we're doing it. And it's wonderful to work with equally passionate people. And so I think we all had tasks allocated, right? So I had thought about who should be where, in what sections of that area, who's looking after the distributors, who's looking after the guests, who's looking after the celebrities come in, who's making sure the MC's on track on the script, and we obviously had an event agency who we had hired for this, but we had to stay on top of it because, someone has to be holding all the ropes. And so, it was a huge hit. All I remember people saying is, it didn't feel like we were not in Bangladesh without just being closer to the stadium.
You're being incredibly humble there. But to me, one of the things that comes out of that is you have an event agency. And the natural thing for someone like me to do is, hey, that's what we pay them for. They'll do it. But the way you think, and I think whatever your challenges in the past, you grew to be this person. It conditioned you to be somebody who goes, okay, I can't bank on that happening. So I need to make sure I'm on top of it as well personally. And that's one of your traits. But you, as much as you said, the experience is amazing and they didn't miss it. And despite all of this planning, it still threw you a curveball at the last minute, which could have put a real dampener on it at the time. So you want to tell us about that a little bit?
So we had a really big celebrity face, cricketing face, that had promised to do the meet and greet. I think about 18 hours prior, we were told this person is not coming. Just not coming. And so we were in this situation where we said, hang on a minute. We've just gotten past this curveball of making sure 700 and something people are now not in Bangladesh, but in Dubai, and they're having a great time. And this is going to be the high points of that evening where they meet this known TV face. And, cricket and India goes back, how passionate people are. So it's like, well, I'm meeting this amazing, amazing legend.
So contextually, if it was a World Cup for football supporters like me, it's a World Cup and, someone like Ronaldo, Messi's going to be there.
And he's not coming. And, well, the good
Sorry,
news
he's
was,
not even coming to the World Cup. I'm not going to the World Cup. I'm going somewhere else, but Messi or Ronaldo are coming. So it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But no, he's not coming.
He's not coming.
18 hours before.
18 hours before. The saving grace was we hadn't announced the name. So we'd kept it a surprise and a teaser, so it makes people more curious. But it played to our advantage because we were like, okay, well, we can still salvage this situation. And so we had to find someone who would get a visa for Dubai, who was close enough to fly to Dubai, so it cannot be like an 18-hour long flight. And, who could sort of engage and speak, because not everybody is a great orator, let's face it. and, give them everything they've come for, basically. So agree to sign bats and then do this. And it involves everything, Sanjeev. It involves legal paperwork, making sure this person signed off on it. And we're like, where do I even begin? What's the shortlist look like? So we started identifying who's in India.
You have a little black book.
Who's in
Let's be fair. I know how this works, Nupur.
We started opening all our black books. I certainly opened mine. I certainly did. I was calling everybody I knew in the cricketing fraternity to say, this has happened. What can I do? And we had to look at pockets, like I said, close enough to Dubai. So it has to be nothing more than a 2-hour-long flight. That's it. And we got somebody. And fortunately, it saved the day. And it happened at the nth hour with every single detail of this person coming, meeting, doing photo ops, and the works. But it happened.
Did you sleep much during that
No. No. By the third day, I was zombied. I was living out of Dubai for a month to make sure all of this is prepped up. But I was absolutely like zombied out. But like just running on, I think, all the energy and making sure this just happens.
The resilience of Nupur Gadkari.
Well, but I have to say, like in Percept, I had a few people to thank. I have to thank Maneet. He's one of those bosses who I think let me be me. I used to challenge the status quo a lot, and he would let it happen. And I remember saying things to him like, and we laugh about it now, but I remember saying things to him. So he'd, in a team meeting, he'd be like, so where's the fire? And I'd be like, there is no fire, but I'm showing you the spark.
I love it.
Which can become the fire. And there would be this moment of, okay, I get what you're trying to say to me. And we laugh about it now, but I have a lot to thank him for. He was incredibly patient. He let me be me. He let me explore my avenues. He was open to new ideas. And it was wonderful to work with him.
But Nupur, I love that. There's your boss saying, where's the fire?
Yeah.
But what was your message? Okay, there's no fire.
Not yet.
Spark. Not
but
yet.
There's a spark.
But that to me shouts and screams about somebody who always thinks about the what if.
Yeah.
Always has faced it so many times in life. The curveball is not signed until it's signed. Your job isn't there until you're sitting at the desk.
With an active email address.
With an active email address that you can see in front of you that you started.
Yeah.
But that whole conditioning, that preempts the problem. And that's what I love about that.
Yeah.
You don't wait for the problem to happen.
Yeah.
To turn into a fire.
Yeah.
And that, you just take it for granted, but it's incredibly powerful. But you're also somebody who takes on challenges. And that's what I love about you. That why not? I can do this. It doesn't have to be the typical barriers. This is the funnel you're in. This is what you can do, can't do. This is what you're trained to do.
Yeah.
You break all of that narrative. And so you go from celebrity marketing to sports marketing. And then, that there came a phase where you were offered an opportunity within Castrol, because you loved your time at Castrol.
Yeah.
Where you said, hey, there's an opportunity within oil distribution. Nupur, tell me about that.
Look, I always worked for the oil company. So we were all about making a category like oil interesting. So one was through the lens of sports. Second was through the lens of independent workshops or places where people go and service their two-wheelers. And I was in charge of that channel for India, and we had about 6,000 or 7,000, what we used to call bike points at the time.
Bike points.
Bike points. A point where you can service your bike.
Got it.
And the idea was that these independent workshops are literally independent. You have to go to them and say, look, if you want to create loyalty, from a marketing lens in the audience, which is mechanics that service bikes. Because usually, you get people who come to your service station and say, India's a very choose it for me, do it for me market. So very little consumers actually know, in my bike, there should just be a Castrol. And unless it's OEM recommended,
OEM?
Original equipment manufacturer, unless it's recommended. Very few people know what they're supposed to do. So the best thing they do in Hindi, they go, Bhaiya, jo best hai dal dena. Meaning, Bhaiya, whatever, brother, whatever's the best, put that in.
Got it.
So the brother, or the mechanic in my case, becomes your influencer. And he should then say, I will put Castrol. So you need to grow that loyalty in this channel. And it's incredibly difficult because the next best oil competitor is doing the same. Okay? And so you have to build that community. You have to make them believe you're in it with them. And I became, a person managing the channel, which was a bit of brand marketing because you were pushing certain two-wheeler brands and working alongside brand managers to say, why should this channel grow for this specific brand and what's the penetration and what's the growth looking like? Along with sales, because they used to be regularly in touch with the stocks and inventory and the sentiment and the education levels. Or by the way, Gulf just took over that bike point of ours, and then there's crisis, and then you got to figure it out. So there were a lot of these, I think, mechanic heartbeats that they would be very in tune with. So I had to work with both sides of the business in that role.
And you had to work with production to make sure if you push something
If there's
out,
if there's a mechanic offer, if there's a promotion that we roll out along with, again, the brand team. But yes, it was everyone in supply chain to say, if this is happening, then this is what goes into the packaging. The label looks like this. So there was a lot of, like I said, little bits of the brand and little bits of the sales. So it was a mix, the role.
something that I, again, would like to share with people, that is your approach to each challenge, which hasn't probably come out as clearly as I'd like. One of the things I've noticed you do is whatever you take on, you go on this ridiculous immersement into the world of that role and that environment. And, we've heard this term, you go on an induction. The induction just only skims the surface for you. So in this world, I remember you telling me about how you learned about bike points, somebody else you admire.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So cannot go without calling out a few names here. So I think the one person who just, I think, inspired me and lit that little tiny spark in me for the bike point role was Ram.
Who's Ram?
Ram recently retired as the global CMO of Castrol. Incredible person, insane amount of insights. But he was someone at when I was just transitioning from the sports marketing to this role, we were at an India game in Australia, in Melbourne. And we were just sat and talking. And I said, Ram, I'm actually taking on a role. You had envisioned this channel called Bike Points. I would love to know anything you can that I need to know about this role, what I can do, what I should look out for, because I have you here, And we spent 2 hours. India's batting, by the way, and we're talking everything about mechanics and loyalty and what changes the loyalty game, how you need to be so in tune with the heartbeat of the mechanic and what this person prides and does not pride in his job, etc. And oh my God, I was just taking endless notes on every little piece of paper I could find. And I have him so much to thank him for, because he set the tune to think of Bike Points as a brand, not just as an independent workshop. Think of it as something you need to grow. And it has to be a brand you need to start thinking about. It can't just be something you call a workshop. So that transition was so important for me, and it was so inspiring. I was so like, when am I going home? I'm like ready to start this role. So yeah, big thank you to Ram.
Something you mentioned there about thinking of this as a brand. Something about connecting with the influencer. And those influencers, those mechanics and those workshops come from they come from probably a heritage of mechanics, from people who are economically challenged,
absolutely,
from rural areas whose father and grandfather probably worked in some sort of workshop or manual work or something like that.
They are incredibly hardworking people, Sanjiv. They come from small towns and they want to make it big in the city. and their only way of learning is not formal education. They probably stop learning formally at the age of 10 or 11.
And presumably at the time, or maybe even now, people don't respect them.
No, they
or didn't respect
unfortunately
them.
don't, because they've left everything, and for them, they are like the doctors for the engine. They are the ones who fix it and know where it's hurting the most and what needs to get fixed. But they don't have any formal education in it. So they don't care so much about their appearance or the cleanliness of their
Or they
jumpsuits.
didn't. Let me. This is what I was trying to get to. That your way of looking at the world,
Yeah.
your way, the sort of way you empathize with people, led to you being involved in an absolutely amazing initiative within that channel
Yes.
that transformed the way these mechanics felt about themselves and helped them gain respect, self-respect, as well as respect in a wider sense.
Yeah.
You've got to share a bit about that.
You should know what it is to be in the life of someone like that. It starts with, having to go to work and doing a very, very intensely laborious job, fixing bikes and working with grease and oily stuff every single day. And not really worrying about, like I was saying, having clean clothes, jumpsuits, blah, blah, blah. And these people don't take pride in their jobs because they are looked at as someone who's just unclean or dirty because of the appearance.
So they don't take pride in their job partly because people don't take pride in them or don't respect them. So that plays into their own self-worth as well, right?
100%. And if you ask them, they tell their kids that if someone asks you what your father does, say, I'm an automobile engineer. Don't say I'm a mechanic. Because the minute you say mechanic, it just changes your perception of who this person might be. So we created something, and I think what the insight was, everyone's in a price war, in a Me Too war in marketing, as they call it. So, for example, if in the cola world, if Pepsi drops their price by 10 rupees, Coke will do the same. And you have to stop it from being just price related, because that's the easiest thing to do, because it hits your margin, your bottom line, and then the bike point owner knows that, oh, I'm making more money with this person because and so your loyalty shifts very, very quickly, because for them every single penny and rupee counts. And so we decided to go beyond money margins and say, look, we're in this with you for your life. We know you've not been formally educated, and we're not here to take you back to your 7th grade or your 8th grade. We're here to help you understand that to run a successful business, you have to have not just the technical skills, which, by the way, you have already, but you need to have a whole range of soft skills, a whole range of making sure you have repeat customers, because that's where you will start growing your money, and you will build your own base of loyal people who stay around your bike point, who will come and service their bike very regularly. How do you remind them of a oil change every 90 days? How do you remind them, have you looked at that again? That was giving you some trouble. So the finer points that actually make a business more successful, the soft skills, like I said. And we created this as a formal program for 2 years. We printed textbooks in various languages of India, because this had to be locally delivered.
So you localized it?
Had to be, because they wouldn't speak English. That's not their first language. The teachers or the people who were training them had to be very, on point with their language, their delivery, and knowledge in the subject. And this is not about giving, a refrigerator at the end of your quarterly target. It's not about saying, I'll give you 10 rupees more for this offer. It's about telling them you're in it and feeling it with them to make them somebody.
Nupur, that is your stamp all over it. Being with them alongside their challenges, not just focusing on a transactional basis with them, making them feel better, to build loyalty, to change the equation, if I may, change the equation of the competition from simply monetary to building real community and real loyalty. And I find it incredible that what you developed was this 2-year program where they graduate at the end. And that must be transforming not just for themselves, but for their families and beyond.
This was a program that was developed at the Asia Pac level, Sanjiv, but I think I had to make people see the India lens on this. This was not just saying, we're going to train you on soft skills. This was getting into the minds of those people, the lives of those people, to say why. Why does this mean something to you? And I think what India does wonderfully is emotion and communication, which I keep telling you about, which does not exist in the West. It's very, very functional. You know,
Come on. You tell me about this all the time. Tell me about the detergent and
look. Okay, the detergent, favorite category. I've seen a lot of communication here, and also in other Western countries where it's very, this is a fabric cleaner or a detergent. It's going to clean your clothes. End of advert. And I'm like, I know that, but why should I care about it? Because I come from a world where there was a campaign, I remember that Surf had done, Surf Excel. And in Hindi, it was called Daag Achhe Hain, which in English means stains are good. And it goes actually, if you look at it technically, against the USP of the brand, because stains are not supposed to be good. But the brand is saying they're so good because we know we can beat them. So we love stains. Bring it on. And there's amazing, amazing advertisements and communications against this little sister walking. She falls into a muddy puddle. Her entire uniform, which is white, by the way, becomes suddenly brown. And she starts to cry. And her brother looks at that, feels very sorry, steps into the same puddle and pretends to beat the crap out of the puddle to say, what did you do? What's wrong with you? And she starts smiling. And the mother is looking at these two kids going, don't worry, stains are good. Because she's not worried about all that muddy water on white uniforms, by the way, you know, all that stain going away. Now, that's the power of creativity and of emotion and of going against the status quo. And which is why sometimes I go, here's a fabric, cleans your clothes. Okay, you good? Did you understand that? It was very hard, very difficult to communicate. Just hope you got it. I'm like, what is that?
Nupur,
What is that?
That is, I find it hilarious every time we see an ad together and I'm sitting there looking at your face. Don't say it. I know. But you bring that creativity, not just in the form of advertising, that understanding and who is this communicating to?
Audience. It's all about the audience.
All about the audience, whether it's B2B or B2C or
Yeah.
however, or both. And I know we've talked about a lot of your different roles, but there's one role, I guess your last one in sports in Asia, at the height of which you had an incredible challenge. So you were head customer marketing.
That's right.
At Star Sports. For those who don't know Star Sports, if you have heard of Sky Sports,
Yeah, it's the equivalent.
it's the equivalent. And so every sporting event, major sporting event, is marketed, aired through that channel.
We had got the rights for it.
You've had the
yes.
rights for it.
Yeah.
You need to spend your money on sports advertising.
Yeah, it was largely focused on advertisers because any channel, as you know, makes all that money back that you spend for acquiring such rights through advertisements that are, you know, slotted by a certain rate card, and brands come and spend that money. But what's, I think, most challenging for someone like me in that role is how do I influence that one person who has, say, £1,000 to spend that on sports and not news or kids entertainment or general entertainment or any other genre of content. And this person will only be interested in, sure, tell me what do I get if I spend money here? How many viewers do I get? What's the time slot? Because there's specific time slots of high viewership, low viewership. And then decide, depending on the rate of investment, that is this investment worth it? So it's a very challenging role because you're trying to tell someone who's a key decision maker where you should make the decision.
Again, understanding who you need to communicate
100%.
to. Your clarity of that, right?
Yeah.
So these are large amounts of money that they're...
Large amounts of money, and key decision makers being CMOs of these large brands who had these large amounts of money. And it was, I almost had to I created a toolkit, but it was almost like understanding what's a day in the life of this person like? From the time this person wakes up to when he or she gets into the office, gets into the email inbox, comes home. And if you then look at the points, touch points of communication, it becomes evident where your narrative needs to be. Because that sales team is going to make that sales call. But how do you soften the blow and make it a bit more informative at the end of it so that this person goes, oh, yeah, I've been reading about this. I've been seeing this everywhere. I've been hearing about this. I just recently heard that, for example, more women watch the IPL than men. Oh my God, that's a big insight. So the next person, when from the sales, Star Sports sales team calls this person and says, can I have a meeting with you? IPL's coming. This person should be like, actually, yeah, let's meet. I actually read something interesting, because that way you've touch this person in so many different ways so that that sales call is that
But
much more punchy and impactful.
so to be clear, you created a toolkit. There wasn't a toolkit in existence in this
No.
place.
B2B marketing is very different to B2C. B2C has set templates, buy one, get one free, 50% off. You know it works. And these templates have worked for brands irrespective of what category they're in. Unfortunately, in B2B marketing, because it's so focused and nuanced to who you're talking to, like you said, the audience is important, but also what you're selling is important. And so, will a white paper work here? Depending on what the readership numbers are in a country like, let's say, India or South Asia, maybe. Will videos work here? 100%, because video content in a country like this or a continent like this is extremely high in consumption. Well, so you need to understand the pattern and mode of consumption of how you're creating that content. It's not just about ticking the box and saying, oh, I did an article, but yes, who read it?
That's incredible. And you just slipped that in at the beginning of the, but I just want to emphasize that's how powerful that is. You decide to quit your job again.
I do.
Okay. Explain to us what the thinking was and what you did.
I think I'd spent close to 16 years now doing different kinds of marketing and brand and celebrity and channel, and I think I just wanted to once again challenge myself at a very different stage and age in my life to say, firstly, is there anything else out there that I need to know of? Because I have just been in it so much that I haven't taken a step back to see what other skills are needed for me to maybe hone or build that I don't know of. Because now we're in the world of digital marketing exploding, AI exploding, AI now becoming a threat to marketeers, a whole other debate. But I just wanted to know what else is out there that I need to focus on. Secondly, it was important for me to know again where I stand
On a global
among
level.
on the global level amongst many other people who might have similar or more experiences and more years in their cap in terms of work experience, and what does that mean? And so I remember going back to a place I know as home, which was Warwick, and I decided to do my third master's, which was the MBA at that age. It wasn't easy to leave a job like that. I was doing well. It was all going well. But I just decided to hit reset on my life at the time. And it just was a refreshing time because that move changed a lot for me.
You completed a book that you're working on
Oh, yeah.
for a while and got published and is now a bestseller. So how do you fit it in? But tell us about that.
Look, the book was never a book. The book was a collection of poems I started writing at the age of 14.
Okay.
And the reason I started writing was to channelize what I was feeling. Like as you know now, and we've discussed it, I wasn't in a great space. Personally, I was, very often having all sorts of thoughts in my head, from the darkest to the deepest and the worst ones. And because I didn't have someone to talk to, and because I didn't have someone to lean on at the time, words and poetry became my way of writing what I felt exactly how I felt it. And I think it was during a little before lockdown when I decided to just open an Instagram account and start publishing a few lines and say, you know what, yeah, sure, here's something I do also. And I was actively writing during the time as well. But now, because back in the day there was no social media and not as much for sure, but now with the power of social media and the kind of reach it can create, I started getting messages from a lot of people saying, these are the words I needed to hear today. This is what I'm feeling right now. Someone wrote to me once saying, this little line or these 5 lines are my life right now. And that blew my mind to know, oh my, firstly, I felt sad because I felt like someone else is going through that kind of agony and pain. And secondly, I think that's where that little seed sprouted in my head going, what if this was a book that became a friend for someone like this to lean on in their times of need? If they don't have someone to speak to, maybe they can open a page of this book and find comfort in those words. Because I think one of the things I felt in some of those poems was a ray of hope, and in some I felt absolutely broken, and in some I was questioning the God I believe in so much, saying, can you make this stop? So there was a lot of different aspects to it. And I felt like, what if this just became that source of power or encouragement to somebody else? And that's where the idea of publishing came by. And then it got the response that it did. And I'm ever so grateful, not because of the response, but because I feel like if it's touching so many lives, that's all I needed from this more than anything else.
So verses and sonnets is what the book's
Verses
called.
and sonnets, freshly brewed.
Nupur, you have an amazing ability to channel difficulty and pain into something positive and constructive. And part of my journey is similar to yours in terms of wanting to express thoughts and insights that other people don't have the voice to express or the channel to express, to help them relate and feel that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't read it yet, we'll put a link in the bio, and we'll make sure that that friend is available and visible to many more people to lean on.
Yeah.
So that took you to the MBA.
Yes.
The bit that you haven't shared, and I think I'm going to join the dots up. Way back in 2007, 2008,
Yeah.
you finally believed that you could do something for yourself.
Yeah.
And took that leap of faith to test yourself and challenge yourself on a global scale, doing your master's. And we know how that turned out and the choices you had to make, the difficult ones. And for me, this is you breaking away again. Like you said, made some big life choices. You sold up everything you had in Mumbai. But I see this as you going out to prove yourself again, prove all those doubters again. And you found yourself at Warwick Business School doing this MBA again. Through that journey, just like you did in the previous masters, you set about exploring and challenging the thinking in your dissertation. And you came up with, again, a model which hasn't been written about, something that you've created. And I'd love for you to share that with everybody.
It's one of the most passionate things that have come out of the MBA that I've felt so strongly and passionately about. So in traditional marketing, you have something called as a marketing mix. And when I was studying it, it was the 4 P's of marketing. Now there's 7. But the 4, let's go back to the 4. It's product, price, place, promotion. So what's your product or service? What are you selling it at? Where are you selling it? And how are you promoting or selling it? And as I was discovering my dissertation topic, I realized that sustainability was a big area that's now extremely important, because what I realized through my research was consumers are becoming more and more conscious of what or how a specific person, brand, or product is associated with any sort of harm done to the planet or the environment in any sort of shape or form. And the UN actually came up with 17 development goals, or SDGs as they call them. And those are your goals for sustainability, and to believe that you need to save this world and save our environment. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, I realized more and more that the marketing mix has to have the fifth P, or now the eighth P, which is the planet.
Wow.
And that's because a consumer is making a decision on whether or not to purchase a product or service, depending on how sustainable you are. Is this a product that was made in a sweatshop? Is this a product that is made from recyclable material? Has this product and its raw materials been ethically sourced? Like I said, no amount of child labor. All of these questions are being asked today. The marketeers, product managers, brand managers cannot not think of not just what's the product and what are you selling it at, where are you selling it, how are you promoting it, but how does it impact the planet? So the fifth P is something I introduced in my dissertation. I'm hoping to publish it at some point because there's a lot of work and research involved in it, but I'm very passionate to include it officially, to be taught as the fifth P of marketing.
Nupur, that is incredible. I can't wait to read about this, and you need to publish this soon. You have this amazing ability to write and knock things out, multitask. So, you know, the world needs this. You are a thought
100%.
leader. And as you pointed out, we can't ignore the planet. Sustainability, it's the future of our children and generations to come. And marketeers can't afford to ignore that anymore.
Not at all.
As I started in this journey, we talked about breaking the mold, breaking the stereotypes. Somebody who takes on challenges, sometimes for the sake of it's a challenge, I can do this. But now you're working in an environment which brings all of this together. Incredibly reassuring that the world still has these opportunities for somebody who doesn't fit the stereotype. Is this a brand person? Is this a product person? Is this a B2B person?
Yeah.
So tell us about your current role as a global marketeer.
So I work with a fintech organization called Candex. And for all those who know a little bit about procurement, we are the master vendor, or the spend consolidator, as we call it, for something known as a tail spend, or an indirect purchase for big organizations. And we have a lot of very, very big global companies working with us. They believe in us, they trust in us. So we have some really amazing customers. But what's more amazing, I think, is for me to be able to wake up every day and work with this powerhouse of passion. Every single person in Candex has either built legacy companies before or has come from big legacy companies, heads of different departments, but are now in this one team to win it. And all I see, like never before, are two things. One, the kind of collaboration that Candex as a team has. I've never seen it. And I keep saying this to my CEO, Jeremy, that the one thing that stood out to me right from the interview process all the way to now is how there's no silos. Nobody works in silos. It's not about, this is not my job, don't even ask me. And I've had people say that to me in some of my previous organizations, because it's so huge. You're a 20,000, 10,000 plus company. You have to work in your little space. But Candex is all about learning together. It's all about collaboration and winning together. I love that. And I think the second thing is just the sheer passion. You know, we are a global company. We are spread over the world. But what keeps us going is just this, let's win. You know, we're such an awesome product. People love us and we have all these amazing things to share. Let's just go get it. And I love that. I love that it fuels my passion.
You've just had funding from Goldman
We
Sachs, right? Investment
have.
from Goldman
We
Sachs.
have. It's all over the news. And
Congratulations.
thank you. We're very, very happy and proud. And we're doing everything we can to make the most of that. So I think that's what I love about Candex, and we have some real fun while working. I think that's important.
And my last question for you.
Go for it.
Now you're global marketing director.
Yeah.
What's your big dream aspiration? I'm not talking about a year. I'm not talking about any specific title. What's your big dream aspiration?
Look, I don't know if it's a title or a designation or what, but I think I'm enjoying this ride of creating something out of nothing. I think I work best in environments where you give me a white canvas and give me paints and say, paint. And then what I create is what I create. And I'm loving that aspect more because it takes away from the done and dusted templates. It allows for experimentation. It allows for waiting for that acrylic coat of paint to dry and then repainting the whole thing into something completely different. So I love it when I'm given that freedom and a white canvas to build something and continue to build something. And I think that's why one of the things I'm loving in my current job is we have been at that stage where something wasn't done before and let's try this, let's do this. And then you see the results of it and go, oh, wow, that was me. And it comes with its own gratification and sense of satisfaction. So I think a role that allows me to continue to do that, of course, in a probably a CMO position would be fantastic. But it's just something I enjoy because I think that comes with its own, by the way, responsibilities, accountabilities, making sure you know exactly where you're spending that kind of budget, making sure you get the most out of it, and various other things. But I'm up for the challenge.
You absolutely are, Nupur. And from my perspective, and look, I've been fortunate. I am fortunate to know some amazing people who've achieved amazing business success, whether in the corporate world or entrepreneurial space. I think you're underselling yourself. I can see for those investors out there, and it may well just be where you are now. My advice is don't underestimate what you have sitting here in front of you as in the form of Nupur Gadkari. I can see you as a CEO of an organization. You've got all of the credentials of leading inspirationally, of being creative, of breaking the rules to recreate something bigger and better.
Yeah, very kind. Thank you.
And whether that's an entrepreneurial environment like this or a larger corporate organization, wherever the future takes you, they'll be lucky to have you. And I feel grateful for you coming on this podcast. Thank you very much.
No, it's been so much fun. And I know it's been probably cathartic in a certain way because I've been talking about a lot of my past, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.